In the beginning of the parsha, the pasuk says, "Vayakhel Moshe es kol hadas b'nei Yisrael." Moshe gathers all the Yidden. He tells them, "Sheishes yom teyosam malacha," 6 days work should be done, and then to keep Shabbos on the 7th day. Rashi says, "Hikdim lohem azhara Shabbos letzivu melechas hamishkan," that the warning of Shabbos comes first before the command for the Mishkan. Loimar, to say, she'eino doiches haShabbos, the work on the Mishkan does not push off Shabbos. Now, seemingly, what Rashi is saying is that the reason why the Torah tells us about Shabbos before the Mishkan, from the actual fact that it puts it first, that tells us that Shabbos is the stricter of the two, and therefore the Mishkan does not push it off. The question, however, is we find a number of times in the Torah when different commands are next to each other, and Rashi actually explains that it's the later one that comes first. For example, regarding this very topic itself, in the previous parsha, in Parsha Sisa, it says about the Melechas HaMishkan before Shabbos, and Rashi explains over there that even though you're going to be so enthusiastic about making the Mishkan, Shabbos should not be pushed off. Again, so over there we have the Melechas HaMishkan before Shabbos, and Shabbos is the second one, and yet Shabbos is not pushed off. And yet here Rashi seems to be saying that the fact that Shabbos is first is the proof that it doesn't push off the Mishkan. So there are Mefarshim that explain that in these other places, there's always some extra word of how we learn that that particular thing shouldn't be pushed off. So for example, back in Parshas Kisisa, the pasuk spoke about the Mishkan, but then it says, "Ach," as Shabsoi said to Shmoiru, but you need to keep my Shabbos. The word "ach" teaches you that on Shabbos you can't work in the Mishkan. In other words, that yes, in truth, usually the first thing is the more important one. But since we have the word "ach," that teaches us that Shabbos does not get pushed off. However, says the Rebbe, it's difficult to learn this way, because if that's the case, back in Parshas Kisisa, why does the Torah need to put the Melechas HaMishkan first and then say, "Ach, however, but don't push off Shabbos"? It should have just been simpler to put Shabbos first and then put Melechas HaMishkan, if in fact, if something comes first, it's going to be the more important one. Which then tells us that by putting something first on its own, not necessarily teaches us which one pushes off the other. And yet here Rashi says that Hikdim Shabbos, that Shabbos comes first, to say that it doesn't push, to say that Melechas HaMishkan doesn't push off Shabbos. So the Rebbe explains, when Rashi says Hikdim lohem azhara Shabbos, loimar she'eino doicha Shabbos, it doesn't mean, as we thought originally, that the reason the Torah put Shabbos first is to teach us that the Melacha of the Mishkan doesn't push off Shabbos. Because I said before, that we know already from Parshas Kisisa, and surely Moshe Rabbeinu would have told the Yidden that Shabbos is not pushed off. What Hikdim Lohem means is that when Moshe Rabbeinu was giving over the command of Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu told the Yidden about Shabbos first, before Melechas HaMishkan. Loimar, to teach them that Shabbos doesn't get pushed off. In other words, like this, when Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, he said Shabbos first. Moshe Rabbeinu is changing the order. And this is what Rashi is explaining. Why is Moshe Rabbeinu changing the order? It's because he wants to show them the strictness of Shabbos. But the question actually is, why is Moshe Rabbeinu changing the order? What's the point of here? Why did Hashem say it in one way and Moshe Rabbeinu is saying it in another way? In order to understand this, the Rebbe goes back to look at the Rashi in Parshas Kisisa. There's actually two Rashis. First we have the pasuk says, "V'ato daber el bnei Yisrael leimor," that Moshe Rabbeinu should speak to the Yidden, and Shabsoi said to Shmoiru to make sure to keep Shabbos, etc. On these words, "V'ato daber el bnei Yisrael," Rashi says, "V'ato," and you, even though I appointed you to command the Yidden about the Mishkan, still it shouldn't be light in your eyes to push off Shabbos because of the work of the Mishkan. So that's Rashi number one. Then Rashi says, on the words "Achas Shabsoi said to Shmoiru," that even though you're going to be all excited, enthusiastic, and eager to do the work of the Mishkan, Shabbos shouldn't be pushed off. And Rashi goes on to explain this idea that when it says "ach," it's coming to exclude something. It sounds like we have two different limudim, two ways of learning that Shabbos doesn't get pushed off. One from the word "vi'ata," that even though I commanded you about Melechas HaMishkan, nevertheless it shouldn't be light in your eyes to push off Shabbos. And number two from the word "ach." So we need to understand, number one, why do we need to have two different ways of learning it out? Also, how do we learn from the word "vi'ato" and you, even though I appointed you over the Melechas HaMishkan, to command about Melechas HaMishkan, Shabbos shouldn't be taken lightly? The Rebbe asks some other questions on these Rashis as well, which we're just going to explain as we move on in the explanation. And the Rebbe explains. These two Rashis, Rashi is actually talking about two different things. In the first Rashi, Va'ata daber al b'nei Yisrael, that even though I appointed you to command the Yidden, we're speaking about Moshe Rabbeinu himself. And that's why it says in singular, Afal pishev kadaticha, even though I appointed you over the Melechas HaMishkan, al yokel beinecha, it shouldn't be light in Moshe Rabbeinu's eyes, Shabbos shouldn't be taken lightly. In the second Rashi, Rashi is speaking in relation to the Bnei Yisrael, that Afal pishev tihi you in the plural, Redufen, even though you, the Yidden, will be all excited about the Mishkan, Shabbos shouldn't be pushed off. So now we'll understand why we actually need to be warned about this twice. One for Moshe and one for Bnei Yisrael. How do we understand this? So, the command for Melechas HaMishkan, according to Rashi, actually came after Hashem forgave the Yidden for Chet HaEgel. This is going to be the testimony that Hashem had forgiven them, and He's bringing down the Shekhinah to dwell amongst them. So first we're looking at the second Rashi, where Rashi says that even though the Yidden, you're all going to be excited about making the Mishkan, Shabbos shouldn't be pushed off. That means because of their eagerness, their excitement to finish off the Kapara, they might end up stumbling and do work even on that Shabbos. But that's only as far as the Yidden. Regarding Moshe Rabbeinu has no part in the Chet HaEgel at all. In fact, even when the Yidden were, so to speak, excommunicated from Hashem and the Shekhinah wasn't dwelling amongst them, by Moshe Rabbeinu, the Shekhinah was still there. So Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't have to be given this warning, even though you're going to be so excited about making the Mishkan. In fact, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't even have a part in building the Mishkan. But Moshe Rabbeinu needs to be told something else. That even though, Afal pishev kadaticha, and this is the first Rashi, even though I appointed you to command them about the Mishkan, don't take Shabbos lightly. What does this mean? So first the Rebbe looks at another point. We know generally when Moshe Rabbeinu taught the Yidden Torah, there was lots of differences in different groups of Yidden, how the Yidden were taught the Torah. Aaron is first taught, then Aaron's children, then there's the Ziknei Yisrael, then there's the rest of the Yidden. So there are differences amongst the Yidden. But here, it was Vayakhel Moshe's Kol Adas B'nei Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu is appointed to tell all the Yidden together. He's telling them about Melechas HaMishkan. And therefore Rashi says that Moshe Rabbeinu is being told by Hashem, even though I appointed you to command all the Yidden together for Melechas HaMishkan. That means there's something unique over here, something special over here. So Moshe Rabbeinu could have some thought, there's something so unique about the Mishkan, maybe Shabbos could be taken a little bit more lightly in this context. And that's why he says, no, it shouldn't be taken lightly in your eyes. So now we understand how we learn it from the word V'ato daber al b'nei Yisrael. And you should speak to the Bnei Yisrael. That what? Moshe Rabbeinu on the one hand was commanded to tell all the Yidden about the Mishkan, but he's also commanded to tell all the Yidden as they're gathered together regarding Shabbos as well. And this is what we're learning from the pasuk over there back in Parashat Sisa, V'ato daber al b'nei Yisrael, tell them about Shabbos, that the Yidden need to be gathered together there as well. And he's going to tell all the Yidden together about Shabbos. That means it's as equally important, definitely not lighter than Melechas HaMishkan, and therefore don't take Shabbos lighter than the Mishkan. And on the contrary, Shabbos actually cannot be pushed off from the Mishkan. Says the Rebbe, now we can understand why the change in order from Parsha Sisa, the way Hashem is telling it to Moshe, and Moshe Rabbeinu giving it over to the Yidden in our Parsha. In Parsha Sisa, the first comes Melechas HaMishkan. That's the main topic over there. But Hashem is saying, after giving over about the Mishkan, Hashem is saying, but make sure that Shabbos doesn't get pushed off. In our Parsha, when Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the Bnei Yisrael, and Hashem commanded him already to warn the Yidden that even though they're going to be so eager and excited about the Mishkan, Shabbos shouldn't be pushed off. So as an extra theme, Moshe Rabbeinu actually warns them about Shabbos first also, even before he tells them about the Mishkan. So in this way, it's always in the front of their minds, in the top of their minds, that Shabbos always comes before Melechas HaMishkan, and therefore they'll be extra careful never to be Mechalel Shabbos, even as they are excited about Melechas HaMishkan, and it will always be Shabbos in La Hashem in the most beautiful and holy way.